Hey guys, it's Nichole Eaton with the Rock Your Soul book and podcast, where we talk about how to hack your mindset, grow your intuition, and live your best life. Welcome back, guys, to the Rock Your Soul book and podcast. I am so excited. I have one of my favorite humans of all time on this podcast with me today. I would love for you guys to welcome April Santo Domingo. She is all the way from Washington State, and you might know her from her YouTube channel, April's Beautiful Mess. She's also an intuitive soul coach and just starting in the self-help field, but she's been helping people for a long time. So I'm excited. Welcome, April.
Hi, Nichole. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
I am so excited. I'm so fascinated. So April has this really awesome YouTube channel that she does with her family. And I'm so amazed by you because you're like a one woman circus. Like you do a little bit of everything.
I do like to dabble. It's something that was just born out of plain fun. And it just ended up growing. And yeah, my family and I just have fun with it.
So you have all of these videos where you have some videos of, you and your kids and you and your magical singing voice. And you also have started making some videos that are in kind of the helping field of just giving people, especially moms, because we know moms need a little extra love from time to time, a little help in kind of taking better care of themselves and connecting with themselves.
Yes, for sure. So our family vlog, at first it kind of focused more on the kids and stuff, but then I realized after people would kind of start reaching out to me, especially moms, kind of just saying, wow, it seems like, you have it all together. I would quickly put a stop to that and just say, no, it's not that we have it all together. It's more just about embracing what motherhood is, and all the imperfections that come with it. And then just kind of taking it from there and having fun with, showing people that life does not have to be perfect. There's no rule book, no guidebook, obviously, to motherhood. I wish there was. But really, like, the main message of my blog is just, embrace the mess, embrace the challenging times where sometimes it is hard mentally on us, but at the same time, there's no challenge that we are given that we cannot face, right? So, just kind of accepting everything with some grace and knowing that there is a lesson to be learned and that there's like a light at the end of the tunnel.
I love that. And I appreciate that because I think that when people, especially mothers, I want to say especially women, although I know it's not gender specific, the whole comparison thing, but it is easy to look at somebody's life. And especially because you and your family are just absolutely gorgeous, but you're also like wonderful humans. And so I think it's hard to look at that in all those moments and do the comparison. And I think it's really wonderful that you kind of say, no, that's not what it's like. And I know I actually caught a video of, I think one of your kids was having like a little bit of a meltdown and you posted that. And I love that you posted that because for me, that's real life, that kids sometimes have meltdowns and sometimes don't listen. And, just the reality of the situation. How was it the first time you kind of put yourself out there in that way? I'm curious.
I feel like I am generally a pretty open book anyways. And I never wanted my channel to portray something that I wasn't, or portray something that my family wasn't. So doing that was actually pretty, I guess, normal for me. Like I knew that I never wanted to portray like a perfect life because that's not something that I even believe in anyways. It's more about, just loving the imperfections of life. So when I did that for the first time, just kind of showing, okay, yeah, today was a shitty day, I actually received so much good feedback from it that kind of really catapulted me into believing that, people really need to see more of that, especially like when you look on like Instagram, any social medias, it's a highlight reel, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
People tend to forget that. And especially with moms who are stressed, overworked, already dealing with so many emotional aspects to just being a mom on top of, job or have any other things that are going on in life, it's very easy to just be so vulnerable and insecure that when you see other people's social media accounts portraying something that you feel like is untouchable, it's really disheartening. And that in itself like made me really want to reach out even more to those moms and say, hey, you know, it's okay. It's okay to just be you. It's okay to be messy. It's okay to not be perfect. And at the end of the day, the kids are just going to see that you're doing your best, and that's all that matters.
Now, how do you, so there's all of these pieces with you being in the public eye, and there's always the good comments and the good feedback.
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with the not so good feedback? Because I think as like people who are putting themselves out there, it's a very vulnerable place to be for people to make assumptions about your
Mm-hmm.
life or
Mm-hmm.
comments. How do you manage that?
Yeah, good question. For the most part, I just ignore them. Just
Yep.
because, you know, they don't know me. I know my truth. I know what kind of mother I am. I know that I'm doing my best, you know, but at the same time, I wouldn't put myself out there if I was already feeling insecure, you know? So I just have to remember, you know, especially for those who are wanting to go into YouTube or wanting to put themselves or their families out there more, be prepared for those comments, but also just remember that these people, everyone has their own life path, right? And everyone has had their own life experiences that lead them up to that point of why they judge who they judge, and it really has nothing to do with you. So that has also always kind of like saved me from feeling crappy, you know, and taking those comments personally. Like, these people have experienced love in a different way. They've experienced hate in a different way, and that has nothing to do with what I'm doing or what I've experienced in my life. And I just don't want to allow that kind of energy to penetrate my vibes, you know?
That is the most important message. And I feel like right now, just universally, part of dealing with negativity in
Mm-hmm.
general or judgment in general is being super secure with yourself, with, you know, your parenting style or whatever piece you are, I don't want to say exposing because that's not the right word, but whatever
Mm-hmm.
piece you're putting out there. I think
Right.
there is a really big need to find security. How did you, I have to imagine that there have been times where maybe you weren't always in that place of just feeling totally secure with
Right.
who you are or what kind of mom you are. I know I certainly have had, you know, my ups and downs with feeling like a great mom and then feeling like, you know, I know this for
Oh,
a lot of people, this
totally.
quarantine
Yes.
has
Oh my
been
gosh.
a major test in mom balancing acts. But how did you get to the point of feeling more secure so that the comparison dies down and the judgment dies down? Because I think that's the piece that is crucial to having those things die down and being able
Absolutely.
to manage them. So how did you get to that point?
Yeah, so I feel like over the past like few years, like you've definitely helped me a lot with this too, Nichole, of just like being able to set boundaries, like energetic boundaries in whatever relationships are in my life. So even if it's just even if it's someone who's a follower of my channel, or if it's a family member, or if it's a friend, being aware of who feeds your soul is so vital to our health, to our mental well-being, right? And during those times when I'm feeling not so confident, or, you know, if I feel like my energy is very, very weak and I can't take on someone's negativity with, you know, with as much strength as I usually can, I step away. Those are the times when I might step away. I might not vlog for a few weeks, or um, that's when sometimes my most vulnerable posts come out, actually. And those are sometimes the most well received posts that I get, like, or the most engaging posts that I get, because sometimes it's okay to show that you're vulnerable, so that like you can take it in two ways: either show how vulnerable you're feeling and just don't be afraid to be authentically you, or also just step away. You know, it's okay to shut down the social media for a while, take a step back, and recuperate and rejuvenate.
I think that sometimes it's easiest to find yourself and feel more secure in yourself when you shut the voices off and detach from social media. I used to have in my Facebook group, I used to do detaching Sundays, like no technology on Sundays, like just the
Love that.
overall
Yeah.
general lifestyle rule, because I think that it's so easy to get caught up in wanting to look a certain way or be perceived a certain way, and you kind of lose track of who you are in the
Yeah.
process. And
Easy to.
also, like you said, when you're not in the best space, whether it's personal stuff going on, I know you've had kind of a big year with just a lot of personal stuff and loss,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes you just need that space to heal your own stuff and then come back into it stronger than you were before. So I think that those boundaries that you've set, I know I've watched you and I just admire the hell out of you, and I know how much has shifted for you this year and how gracefully you've handled that. And so we talked about kind of the chaos of this quarantine and motherhood. How do
Mm-hmm.
you still find time to prioritize yourself through the healing, through the social media crap, through working and being home and having all this kind of negativity sitting? Like, how do you find time as a parent and a spouse to make space for you?
So I think for me, my favorite way is my sticking to my morning routine, honestly. I find that when I don't intentionally set aside time for myself, the easier it is to drain my battery, basically. So I do my best to wake up even just 30 minutes or an hour before everyone else gets up. And during that time is when I read something that's inspiring. Like, I don't turn on any social media. Like, I don't want anyone else's voices in my head before I do,
Yes.
right? And if it is going to be someone else's voice, it's someone that, like, it's usually a book or a podcast that I listen to that is inspiring and is a good way to start my day. After that, I usually pull some cards or meditate, and then I journal. I love journaling and just getting out whatever's going on in my mind, whether it's something that, is upsetting me or something is exciting me. I need to do that to just clear my brain. And that is like a huge like reset for my day. And then after that, like, I'll do some sort of exercise or something. And then that completes my whole morning. And that usually sets me off, like, for the rest of the day, I'm good. When I don't do that for myself, and especially sometimes I'll fall off the wagon and it'll like go, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. The more days that I skip, the more unmotivated I feel, the more insecure I start to feel. So just making sure that you do prioritize some time in your morning or sometime in your day where it's just you. That is probably like one of my biggest pieces of advice that I always give to moms whenever they contact me for how to make time for themselves. It's literally like, if you can, just set your alarm just a little bit earlier than everyone else, just so you can have some me time.
Yeah, so it's so important. And I remember back, and I don't even know if I read this or heard this somewhere, but I remember when I was a new mom and I was just struggling because I thought, as a new mom, your entire life had to be about your kids. Like, I thought you were a bad mom if your entire life, if you didn't drop everything to be everything to your child and you just kind of shove you aside. And I think that's the mentality that, I was a young mom. So
Right.
that's the mentality that I went into motherhood with. And it just, it really backfired on me. And I remember somebody said something to me along the lines of, they're like, well, you need to take time for yourself. And I was like, I don't have time. I'm working. I'm going to school full time. I have a baby I'm
Mm-hmm.
raising. And
Mm-hmm.
she looked at me and she said, if you don't have 10 minutes for yourself in your day, whose life are you actually living? And I was like,
Yes.
oh, you got
Yes.
me. That was good. All right. That's just stuck with me ever since. If you don't have 10 minutes or 30 minutes in your day for yourself, whose life are you living?
Right, right. And what kind of example are you setting for your kids? I feel like that's something that I've always admired about my mom. So my mom is one of the strongest people that I know. And before, it's just the only because the past couple of years have been a little different as far as this circumstances we've been going through. But before, she would take yearly trips on her own, yearly solo trips. And I love that about her because she would do this to just refresh her soul, and she did it for herself. It never came off as being selfish of her time. It was something I admired. And I knew that that was something I wanted to be able to do for myself and my kids, to see that, you know, when you become a parent, it doesn't mean you become a martyr, right?
Yes.
It doesn't mean that your life has to be on hold. Instead, show them how life continues with them, and that you do these things for them. You know, I want my kids to, like, once they become parents, I'm hoping that they too know how to take time for themselves and prioritize themselves, and don't get lost, you know, in who they are once they become parents, or once they become a wife or husband.
The important piece is that, what is your expectation of who you want to be in the world? And it's always funny to me because I always ask people the question when I'm doing therapy. I'm like, okay, so would you want this life for your child? And if the
Oh
answer
yeah.
is no, then
Yes.
something has to shift. How do you want your child to treat themselves? Well, children learn through watching. So if
Right.
you want your child to treat themselves like they're important, it's not that you just make them important by showing, their importance. It's that you show this is how you make yourself important when the world isn't going to do that for you.
Exactly. Oh, that's so powerful. Yeah.
Let's hear a quick word from our sponsor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
How do you stay true to who you are? And maybe even, with having kids, I feel like it's a constant process of relearning who you are.
Oh,
So
yeah.
what is that process like for you to just staying true?
Yeah. So I was fortunate enough to grow up in a family with a really funny sense of humor. We tend to be able to laugh a lot of things off, even when it's challenging or difficult. And I think that helps a lot when it comes to being a mom, because that mom guilt can set in so easily, right? And the times when we're not feeling like we're doing a good job, or if we feel like we messed up somehow, um, the lesson that my family taught me is to be able to just take things, take things lightly, like take things. I guess when you have a lesson to learn, you take it seriously, but at the same time, don't be so hard on yourself. And that is something that I've had to kind of relearn over and over once I became a mom. Before I had kids, whenever I would hit, blocks or something, I would find a way to get around it or get through it with like a good sense of humor, and have some grace for myself and not be so hard on myself. But then when it comes to having kids, it's like, again, with the social pressure and the mom guilt and just not knowing what you're doing, especially when you have multiple kids. I don't know if you can relate to this, Nichole, but like each kid is so different that each time that you have a new kid, it feels like you're starting all over again.
Yes,
And so it's easy.
totally.
It's like the moment you feel like you have something down, it's completely opposite of what you thought, of what the solution might be. So just, I feel like having grace with yourself and being able to like almost like make fun of yourself and just like, I can't believe you did this, or like, what kind of mom are you? But then just having a funny sense of humor about it. That's why I think I love social media accounts that kind of poke fun at parenthood, and
Yes.
just the funny things in life, the funny ways that we can view our kids, the funny ways we view ourselves. Like, it's so important to have that, because that brings so much more sanity into your life when you can laugh at yourself and not be so hard on yourself when it comes to being a parent.
I also think that it's really important to find your people who can laugh about it with you and be vulnerable about that with you. And, I have met a lot of moms, and it's interesting moving to kind of a new state, because when I was in New York, I had a bunch of friends who also had children around the same time I did. We were all very young moms, and there were
Mm-hmm.
times where we would get together, drink wine, and talk about how much parenting sometimes sucks.
Yeah, yeah.
There's not, not every day is, babies puking all over you. It's not a great day. Like, I
Right,
don't care how
right.
much you love the baby. It's not always a great day. And so it was nice to have somebody who I could be honest with. And I think that honesty in parenting, and especially being a mother, is so important, to find somebody who can say, today sucked. I still love my kids, but man, today was hard. Or, being able to be honest and open, because I remember meeting a friend a little bit later in life, who also had a kid. And I remember saying something like that, something that happened with one of my children was annoying. She's like, seemed a little like taken back at first. And she was like,
Oh no.
yeah, well, but then she was like, I'm so glad you said that, because I
Oh,
think
okay.
that too, I thought I was the only person who thought that sometimes the things my kids do are annoying. And I was like, I just think it's important to talk about all the great things and all the bad things, because the thing about parenting in any roles, it's not polarized. There's no,
Right.
this is what it is all the time. It doesn't really work like that. And so I think giving the truth and being honest about where you're at not only helps moms out of like that mom depression that we can get sometimes, but I also think it helps moms connect with just accepting their selves and where they're at that day. So I love that, because I think if you can come back to holding compassion for yourself in those tough times, because sometimes you do yell, no
Oh
matter how
yeah.
no
Oh
matter how hard you work on it, no matter how zen you can be, there are days. And
right.
it's funny because my kids are older now, so they're just good kids. I'm very lucky in that regard. And it's very rare that I have to yell, but usually if I yell, it's because I didn't do something for myself that day, if I'm being honest. Like, it's
Right.
more of a pour
Same.
the water on top and it spills over kind of situation.
Yeah, absolutely. That's when I know that I did not make time for myself. Like there's sometimes, oh my gosh, girl, there's sometimes where I'm like, how do I even have a voice today? Like I yelled so much.
Yes.
Like, and it's like somehow my kids still wanted to kiss me before they went to bed. It's like, okay, maybe I didn't fuck up that bad, but still, like I knew that my cup was definitely not full, and I didn't prioritize myself enough to where I could be the mom that I wanted to be, you know?
And I think those moments are so crucial, because then you can go back and say, okay, I didn't do anything for myself. And when I do, I handle this differently. And so a lot of
Totally.
people, use mom guilt against themselves. Well, if I take this time, I'm taking it away from my child, or taking it away from quality time, or I'm, shoving them off on the iPad so I can work out for 20 minutes or whatever. But the reality is, you might be doing that and they might be watching the iPad. But when you come back and you're in a better space because you took care of yourself, you're a different, better, more patient, more just present version of yourself. That's like, that's what your kids are looking for. Also, they love being on the iPad. If I'm being,
Yes, no, and that's what they're gonna remember, as part of their day with you. Oh yeah, mom was like happy today,
Yeah.
Like they're not gonna remember, oh yeah, she worked out and I had to be on the iPad.
The
It's like
worst.
that's not yeah, that's the worst thing ever. But that's definitely not what's gonna leave the imprint on their day. What's gonna leave the imprint for them is just how great of a mom you are, because you are taking care of yourself.
And I love that you mentioned earlier that you're so aware of kind of where you're at, that you're willing to give that compassion. And I also, like, for me, a personal practice is apologizing. And so one of the things that I always do with my kids, if I know I acted in a way that I didn't like, I might need a minute. I might need to go take a little bubble bath and come back to it, or go for a walk and come back to it. But the one thing I always do is I always apologize, and I always try to explain where I was coming from. Actually, earlier with my daughter, we had just drove back from Florida. It's like 6 hours from my house, and so we've been in the car all day. And when we got home, my daughter immediately got out of the car and she's like following me around while I'm trying to unpack everything. And she was right behind. I'm like, can you please go somewhere? Like, go play. And her just whole face just sunk. And I was like, oh, that was a moment. But it was just, I just went in there and talked to her, and I'm like, listen, when I'm trying to do stuff, I don't care if you sit in the room with me, but when you're literally following me around, it gives me anxiety. And I'm not, that wasn't my best response. But I think just acknowledging for you and your kids, like, this isn't what you want to do. And it also gives them the ability to self-reflect of, this isn't what I wanted to do. How am I going to do it differently? Because the reality is that we screw up,
Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah. No, my husband and I are the same, where when we know that we've messed up, like we are not afraid to apologize, and we sit down and talk to them and tell them why we were upset, but maybe it wasn't okay with the way we handle it. Like we tend to talk to our little kids kind of like little adults, just because like this is when they really start to process, especially like my son, my oldest, he's 9, and this is how they start to process how they're going to eventually deal with their own like communication errors with people, with their peers, and it's so important to be able to like let them know, okay, there's a process to an apology. You can't just say sorry and then leave it at that. You can't not say sorry and leave it at that. Like there's a good way to do it so that the other person receiving that apology can understand exactly where you're coming from, but also know that you're being genuine.
I think what we're doing, April, and what I love that you do on your channel and through your Instagram is I love that you show up so fully and unapologetically yourself. And I love the way you show other people how to do that, because I think that we're kind of undoing a big generational expectation of what motherhood's become.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big override, because I think that, our generation specifically has come into parenting feeling like our children need to be our world, and that we need to abandon ourselves in some regard. And so I think that what you're doing is so brilliant in how you're showing up, not only to undo that processing of, no, it doesn't have to look like that. We can show our kids how to live, the right way. You can see what works for your family. Maybe in some regards that works for some people and how they live their lives. And totally, I think for, other people, it doesn't, and it won't. And I adore your mother. I was so lucky to meet April's mother when I was in Washington this past November, and she is the coolest woman.
Yes,
but I admire her, and I admire her. I actually take some solo trips. I don't do it every year anymore, but I definitely have taken probably a good 5 or 6 solo trips just for a couple days, and it's just like a good soul reset. And so you don't have to do anything wild. You don't have to, go do an international hitchhiking through Europe to connect with yourself. What are your like some of your like go-to things? I know you said your morning routine, but do you have any like hobbies or random things that you like do just for you, like self-care wise?
Like honestly, like I would say I'm pretty low maintenance, so even just walking around Target is good self-care for me.
Alone,
so,
right?
Which is why this quarantine has been so hard when it wasn't open. But just having just some alone time, honestly, like whether that's a walk around the neighborhood, a walk in a store, a walk even going to the grocery store sometimes, like that's all I need, but those are for small amounts of time. Obviously, like being able to get away for like a day or two is just going to see a girlfriend that is like high vibe, and you just know is going to fill your soul. Like that can make such a huge difference.
People, I swear that surrounding yourself with the right people can take you anywhere, can put you in any mood. And
for sure,
I'm always so grateful to have you, and I'm always so grateful for our talks, because you just are such a bright light. Is there anything else like that's on your heart or mind before we wrap up?
I guess, just to sum up like everything we talked about, it's again, just for the mamas out there, like what Nichole said, if it works for you, it works for you. But for those who are kind of feeling like they're losing their sense of purpose, losing their sense of self, there is totally help out there. There's so many resources out there for you to really find yourself again. And again, you're doing this not just for yourself, but for your kids. Show them what it's like to take care of who you are, and to not feel guilty for taking time for yourself. I just feel like a lot of moms just fall into that mom guilt category so easily. I fall in and out of that. So it's just being aware that it's okay. It's okay to make time for you, because that at the end of the day, that's what your kids will see. They're going to see you taking care of yourself, and in turn, that makes you a better mom for them.
It's really fascinating about guilt. It's not one of our core emotions. So it's more of a man-made, societal created over it being a natural response to things. Guilt is almost a created response by societal expectations more, or familial expectations more.
Familial,
so. Yeah.
Big, yeah.
More so than it just being how we should, naturally react. And I think the way you can catch, like, if you feel like you're saying, I should be doing this, you're in a guilt trap. Should is the biggest guilt trap. Bad word. Do you want to? Would it be helpful? Do you have time for that? Is that in your best and highest good right at this moment to be doing that? Do you need something to fill up before you do that? But I think mom guilt is such a little, if we're talking about pandemics, I think that mom guilt falls in that category. And you are now offering intuitive soul coaching services, which I'm so excited about.
Yes, I love it so much. I've worked with several moms already, and just seeing their mindset, transform. Where, what I do is kind of help you undo those familial or generational ties that make you feel like you have to feel guilty, or removing that word should from your vocabulary. A lot of that, it's not impossible. It's not impossible to do that. And I love seeing transformations, and especially my mom clients who finally can see the light and see that they can definitely be themselves. They can find themselves again, do the things that they love without having that guilt on them.
I love that you do that. And make sure that you guys are following April's Beautiful Mess on YouTube. And where else can they find you? What is your website and your Instagram handle?
Yeah, so everything is April's Beautiful Mess. So website is www.aprilsbeautifulmess.com, and both Instagram and YouTube, you'll find me under those same names.
Awesome. Thank you so much for chatting with me today. This has been so much fun.
I know, so much fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to the Rock Your Soul book and podcast. Take a moment to book a one-on-one personalized soul therapy session with me, or catch a live event by visiting www.nicholeeaton.com, or follow me on Instagram at nicholeeaton.xo. Thank you.